Greetings and salutations, loyal viewers of this channel. My name is Sean, and today we got to talk about what went down with former New York Governor David Patterson because he was attacked by a group of teens and adults because his stepson was trying to stop criminal activity. And by the way, there is a dramatic reveal on who this stepson is, so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. But before we get into that, I want to thank everybody who supports this channel via actualjusticewarrior.com/join.
Give me the money. Give me the money, okay?
Well, 4 people are under arrest accused of assaulting former Governor David Patterson and his stepson over the weekend. The suspects include 2 boys, 12 and 13 years old.
So for those of you who are unaware, David Patterson is the governor that, by the way, is legally blind as a governor that took over after Eliot Spitzer was ousted from office when his hooker scandal ended up coming out into the public. So he served his time as governor, he moved on, Andrew Cuomo took over after him, and since that time, he has decided to marry a woman that lives on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and thus he has a stepson known as Anthony Sliwa. And yes, I looked this up myself and found out that this Anthony kid is the son of Curtis Sliwa, the Guardian Angels guy who was the candidate for mayor on the Republican side in opposition to current Mayor Eric Adams. So yeah, totally mixed up. The elite party with each other, they marry each other. This should be surprising to no one. But what is surprising, what is shocking, is that the 70-year-old David Patterson, again, who is legally blind, was physically assaulted by both children and adults because his son tried to stop those children from committing crimes.
Because the kids who were involved, I didn't see them as juvenile delinquents so much as I saw them as mischievous kids. They were climbing up the bricks to a building that's adjacent to our building when my son, who was walking the dog by himself at the time, admonished them to come down and told them if they didn't come down, he was going to call the police. And they came down, and one of them got into something with him, and he kind of threw the kid aside.
So Anthony, the stepson in this situation, the son of the Guardian Angels guy, sees a bunch of kids that are climbing up the side of the building, possibly going to break in, and he decides to tell them to stop climbing that building, otherwise he's going to call the police. And this, of course, led to conflict between the two, but that conflict eventually ended up getting resolved, and later on, after Anthony finished walking his dog, he ended up going for a walk with the former governor about 45 minutes later.
But then, about 45 minutes later, he and I were walking east on 97th Street. We turned on 2nd Avenue, and now not only are the kids there, but some of their friends are there. So we got into this, argument with them. But then 2 adults got into the argument, and one of them, this woman who had red hair, was pushing Anthony against the window of the McDonald's. And when I told her to stop, she told me to get the F out of here and was admonishing Anthony not to hit anyone. But then about 2 minutes later, when the fight started, she hit him.
So yeah, you have a woman, an adult woman, going after his stepson right there. She says, "Don't hit anyone, you absolute scumbag." But of course, she is laying hands on him. And by the way, they did make arrests of this red-haired woman. I will show you her in just a little bit. And they're claiming that David Patterson, the 70-year-old, actually started the physical altercation. And although David Patterson admits in engaging in a fight with these individuals, the fact of the matter is, I believe that his story rings more true than the suspects.
Wow, and who do you know who hit you?
I don't know them personally, but I know that the person who hit me, I smashed their head into the window at McDonald's and threw them on the ground. And then somebody who was passing by says, "Was that necessary?" I said, "Yes, it was necessary."
So look, this story is obviously a disaster. First of all, we're talking about the Upper East Side, which is a historically wealthy neighborhood. They're in and around 95th Street, so this is not the territory where you go north enough in New York City and you're ending up in particularly bad neighborhoods. It's still pretty nice on the Upper East Side. Again, it's walking distance from where the governor's wife actually lives. So you have this altercation that is based on these kids trying to climb up the side of a brick building, probably trying to break into that building. They end up assaulting the kid, and David Patterson ends up getting hit, but then he slams the guy into the window, and he's proud of it. And in the most New York moment ever, somebody says, "Hey, is that necessary?" And David Patterson says, "Yes, absolutely." Again, this is the New York level stuff that I'm on board with. A lot of you are like, "Sean, leave the city, leave these crazy people," but the fact of the matter is, sometimes the crazy people are quite enjoyable, and this is a Democratic governor that I'm rooting for. Now, of course, he has the Republican son, or the son of the Republican mayoral candidate, the Guardian Angels guy, but yeah, it's pretty fun stuff all the way around at this moment in time.
You know, when you hear 2 people walking their dog at night attacked by a group of kids, That's like worst nightmare stuff of walking around the city.
Well, the bad thing is that when Anthony fell, which is usually the time that a fight ends, they continued to assault him. That was not necessary.
And we know that they're still looking for these two adults who may have been involved, possibly this woman with the red hair who may have thrown the first punch. We know they're still looking for those two. Is that right?
As far as I know.
So again, I'm not a huge fan of David Patterson, the politician, but David Patterson, the man, David Patterson, the person right here, I'm kind of on board with, if I'm being perfectly honest, because he's coming at this from an old school perspective, which is when you knock somebody down on the ground, the fight is over. It's done. It's kaput. But the fact of the matter is that the thugs that ended up attacking Anthony Sliwa decided that the fight wasn't over, and they were going to, of course, try to stomp him out, which resulted in 5 stitches. Now, this happened in front of a McDonald's. It's on 95th Street. We may see some differences and discrepancies in the surveillance video. I look forward to that being presented as evidence, but the story so far rings incredibly true. But David Patterson actually takes this a step further because he talks about the deteriorating criminal situation in New York City, and he has someone to blame.
I think it was one of those situations, it's sort of like mob mentality when things get out of hand, and then people do things that they normally wouldn't do. That's why I was so happy that their parents came with them, that they turned themselves in, that they're being accountable here. I think that's a good start for them. But it also made me think about right now, what are all these kids doing out at 8:45 with nothing to do? And isn't it because we have turned our attention to people that don't live here and are disregarding the young people in our communities around the city?
This is interesting what you're bringing up. So are you concerned that because we are dealing with the migrant situation in New York City, that our kids don't have any attention on them or any resources?
I think every form of interaction has been affected by such a large number of people, and I'm not blaming them, but such a large number of people coming into an area that doesn't have the resources to support them.
So is that not interesting? Is that not fascinating? David Patterson thinks one of the major problems that is going on in New York City is that they've devoted too much resources, too much attention, and too much time to illegal migrants rather than the criminal situation going on in New York City. Again, former Democratic governor, the lieutenant governor to Eliot Spitzer is saying this. I'm not saying this, and I find this to be absolutely fascinating and an interesting story, and also a tragic story, because David Patterson is a successful older black guy. He's in a nice neighborhood. His son is the son of, again, a mayoral candidate, the head of the Guardian Angels, and they both get attacked on the streets because that is considered to be perfectly normal for these thugs, and you have adults engaging in fights on behalf of criminal kids because, again, that is just normalized in that culture. That is just normal behavior for them, and it doesn't seem crazy to them at all, even though this is one of the most absurd things that you can possibly imagine. And also, I want to emphasize, David Patterson is legally blind. The fact that he even knows that woman has red hair is shocking to me because I guess I don't quite understand the definition of legally blind, but you know what? That is what it is. It's just so you know, the man is 70 years old and a disabled, and he's talking about slamming somebody up against a McDonald's window and how it definitely was necessary to do so. But now we're going to move on to the suspects because we have 4 people arrested. We also, of course, have the juveniles that were involved, but let's focus on the adults because this would not be a full circle kind of story unless we look at them and what they actually do for a living, even though they're engaged in this nonsense.
On the right side of your screen is 34-year-old Diamond Mintor. On the left, 40-year-old Trevor Nurse. Police arresting the 2 of them in connection with a gang assault on former New York Governor David Patterson and his stepson, Anthony Sliwa.
So right off the top, I just want to point out a few things. First and foremost, at least from this camera, that hair looks purple, not red, and now I do think I understand what legally blind actually means. Unless, of course, this woman decided to dye her hair purple after the assault. Secondly, take note of the fact that the ages of these people, these adults that were engaged in this, are significantly older than you would expect when David Patterson is talking about their friends getting involved and engaging in this fight. So already we have some absolute madness right here. We got 40-year-olds, 30-year-olds, 12-year-olds fighting a 70-year-old. That 70-year-old is the former governor.
Both of the suspects are NYC employees.
So for those of you who are unaware of what NYC is, it's the New York City Housing Authority. So these are the people that are meant to help and aid and assist people to get them into public housing in the city of New York, or maybe they do maintenance or something like that. But the fact of the matter is, they work for the city of New York. So city employees are throwing down with the former governor, who's 70 years old, legally blind, and the kid of the Guardian Angels guy in the Upper East Side of New York City in front of a McDonald's in a neighborhood that traditionally is not that bad of a neighborhood. Now you go a couple blocks north, it gets worse. Maybe 95th has been cannibalized by the more criminal north of New York City. But the fact of the matter is, if somebody asks you to go on a date to like a restaurant or something on 95th Street and 2nd Avenue, I would say that's a pretty nice neighborhood, pretty nice spot, historic wealth in the city of New York, lots of beautiful things to see. But right here, it didn't work out so well.
He attacked me.
As he was being led into a police car, nurse told reporters he was acting in self-defense.
He punched me in my eye. His son punched me in my eye.
Now you could hear him say, his son punched me in my eye, his son punched me in my eye, and honestly, I don't really believe that this is the case. What I actually think happened in this particular scenario is that you have the kid of the Guardian Angels guy seeing what he believed to be criminal activity, him deciding to tell them to cut it out, him saying that he's going to call the police, and then he ends up walking, he runs into them a little bit later, and people decide to target the kid, not realizing that this older black guy is with him. So they end up getting into it with him. He's a white guy stepping up to black criminal children. We know how that goes, and they decide to initiate an attack. He ends up with stitches. He ends up getting attacked as he's on the ground, getting stomped out. That is beyond the point of self-defense. And then Governor Patterson ends up intervening. And this is while a bunch of onlookers are saying that this is unnecessary activity and all that. But I just don't believe what this guy is saying. He's saying the kid punched him in the eye, but it doesn't make sense in terms of the sequence of events for the Guardian Angels kid to walk up, realize that those kids are in a larger group, and decide to physically engage with a 40-year-old man. It just does not line up. It does not work with reality. But again, there is surveillance video, and David Patterson is a Democratic governor. This could be more sketchy than I could possibly imagine. So maybe if we get the surveillance video and it shows the opposite, I will produce a retraction. But my gut instinct tells me that these young kids, ones that were climbing up the side of the building, the ones that were engaging in criminality to begin with, are probably the initiators, and the adults end up getting roped in. Hey guys, editing Sean here. So from the time that I shot this video, but obviously in editing, there was actually video of the attack that was released. I can't really show it to you because of the nature of the violence in said video, but you can clearly see multiple attackers stomping out the son of the Guardian Angels guy, Anthony Sliwa. So yeah, that will be linked in the description. It was posted by the father, Curtis Sliwa. So it turns out that the evidence related to this, at least for now, with the evidence that has been produced at this moment, leans towards me being correct. Now, I'm also going to add that in this particular scenario, I do believe that if not for David Patterson being involved in this particular situation, since this falls under the purview of District Attorney Alvin Bragg, if it was just the Sliwa kid, if it was just the Guardian Angels guy's son, then maybe there would be no charges at all whatsoever related to the gang assault. And in addition to that, because this person appears to have fought back, maybe we would actually see charges against him, because that's how District Attorney Alvin Bragg works. He doesn't charge criminals, and he attacks self-defenders. In fact, I believe the Jose Alba bodega is actually nearby this particular area, probably a little bit more north, and that guy, even though it was the most clear and obvious instance of self-defense, was charged with homicide because Alvin Bragg is an absolute monster. So, in this particular scenario, he is very lucky that his mom decided to marry this former black governor, who's 70 years old, because that gives the credibility to this case, although I will point out, it is very likely, in my opinion, that these charges will be dropped anyway. But you know what? I want to know what you guys think about all of this down in the comments below. Do you believe the NYC employees, that they were just innocent angel babies that were attacked by the Guardian Angels guy kid and by the 70-year-old David Patterson? Or do you think that David Patterson's sequence of events seems to be more reflective of reality? On top of that, I will point out that the NYPD has seen the surveillance video. It definitely exists. So they made judgments on who's going to be arrested and who's going to be charged. That's how they found the suspects, based on that video. So it would appear that the police at least buy into their account of events. But again, all your thoughts down in the comments below. If you like the video, show them by leaving a like, subscribe for more content, follow me on the social media, support me via the support links in the description of this video. This has been me talking about madness in New York City. Till next time.